All right, welcome back. We haven't seen Debbie Cox Denova here for a while, but she is back, and Good Vibes is back. And Debbie, good to see you. How are
It's
you?
good to see you too. I'm great. How are you, Martin?
Don't ask. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about stress and overworking. And of course, I'm in the same boat as everybody else.
Yeah.
And I know you are too.
Yes.
So, how do you manage?
This is great. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about how stress is actually good for you. And so I hope to make the case for the viewers at home that stress is good for you. And if you can make the shift in your perception, it will change your life. Okay, not an understatement. So a lot of this research comes from Kelly McGonigal, and she did a great TED Talk for anybody who loves to look at TED Talks. She also wrote a book called The Upside of Stress, Why Stress is Good for You and How You Can Get Good at It. All right, and it's all about how shifting your mindset around stress can actually be a difference maker, not only for your perception of the world, but also for how stress lands in your body. All right, so there was a great research study that was done with 30,000 American adults. And they took these adults and they asked them, how stressed are you over the last year? Have you been high stressed over the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is bad for you? So they took these adults and followed them over an 8-year period and watched to basically see who died. And the bad news is that for those adults who believed or that had experienced high stress, they were 43% more likely to die. But only if they believed that stress was bad for them. Now, we hear a lot about how harmful stress can be, and it is true that if you have a negative perception of stress, your body will go into what we call the fight or flight mode. We hear a lot about the fight or flight. It's associated with stress, right? And Kelly McGonigal talks about how it's a mismatch theory. So we go into fight or flight. It's important if we're running from a tiger, or way back in prehistoric times, if we're trying to escape a saber-toothed tiger, right, to go into a fight or flight mode. But in today's world, it's often really inappropriate for us to be in fight or flight because the stresses do not match what the body is doing. And so the good news is that you can actually shift that. There isn't just one response to stress. You have a number of different approaches that you can take just based on the narrative that you tell yourself about the stress, okay? So you can go into the challenge response, all right? So it's good to know that when you have stress, what it really means is that you care, okay? And we care about a lot of things right now. We're talking about our health. A lot of us, here in South Louisiana have been hit by Hurricane Ida. There are a lot of different things that are happening in our world that are creating stress and pressure within us. The stress is a sign that we care. And the stress paradox really is that the more meaning that you have in your life, the more stress you often have. But if you try to take down all of the stresses in your life, you often deplete your life of meaning. So that's the paradox, right?
You talk about that tiger. What if that tiger is Hurricane Ida?
Right. So in some situations, for example, if you're outside and Hurricane Ida is coming at you or your actual life is threatened, it's appropriate for your body to have that fight or flight response. After the hurricane has passed and you're dealing with the repairs and dealing with the adjusters and the flood damage and all of that, if you're on a chronic basis experiencing fight or flight in the body, it's very toxic to the body. We weren't built for it, okay? So, but how do you handle, these are stressful things,
Yeah,
right?
how do you trick your mind into saying, hey, that's good stuff?
Yeah, so basically it's about being a yes. You hear a lot in the Eastern culture about surrendering to what is. Instead of being in resistance to what is, you actually lean in and you tell yourself that you can handle this. When you do that, you shift from fear to focus. Your body actually has a similar response. We've talked about this before. When you tell yourself you're excited versus being stressed, there's a similar response that happens, but biologically there's something very distinct that happens. The heart rate still increases. You still have sweaty palms. You still go through a lot of the same biological experiences. But the heart, when you are in fight or flight, the blood vessels will constrict. What they found is that even though the heart rate increases when you're in the challenge response, the blood vessels actually stay relaxed. This is significantly different because this is what we see when people are in a state of joy and courage. So we want to shift from having that fight or flight response to the challenge response. And it's really about telling yourself, I can handle this, and leaning into it as a challenge.
What happens when you're in that mode for so long, like we are in this business, and you want to come down,
Yeah.
but you can't?
Yeah. So again, just remember this, and it's really important in an outside-in paradigm, meaning that we often look outside of ourselves to determine how we're going to feel about something. We're taking in narratives from a lot of different people, a lot of different, media outlets. It's really important to be like the loudest voice in your own mind. And so when you tell yourself, first of all, you especially, right? You're helping a lot of different people with what you do, and a lot of us are as well. What we found is that, or what science and research has found, is that when we connect a greater meaning to what we're doing, meaning that it's connected to something that we value, and determining what you value is really important, right? If you can determine what you value and tie it to what's happening, it becomes your personal Everest. Right. McGonagall said she was working on her PhD. She was working late one night. She didn't think she was going to make it. Someone popped their head into the room and said, "Just another cold, dark night on Everest." And it shifted her perspective altogether, because she started to realize that when people climb Mount Everest, they don't complain and whine about it being cold. They understand that these are conditions of the game. So it's really important for us to think, even if the Mount Everest was something that was put upon us, like Hurricane Ida, we didn't choose into it, if we can take it on like our personal Everest, like we chose the conditions of this game and it has more meaning to it, our body will respond in kind, and it will actually benefit us. It can actually benefit us versus deteriorating our health.
We've been filming segments with individuals out there in our area. And some people are complaining that their garbage hasn't been picked up. But then you go to people who've lost their homes completely. Depending on where they live, they're just happy as can be. They're rebuilding, they're doing things because their expectations haven't changed.
Absolutely.
How do you explain that?
Well, it goes back to that perception or that perspective, right? When you hold a narrative in your mind that something should be other than the way that it is right now, that's really the difference maker. Whether we're talking about people who had a lot before the storm or a little, it really is the difference maker, because it's all about your resistance or non-resistance to what is. It is the way Hurricane Ida came, and we're not going to do anything with our resistance to change that, right? Our community was devastated in a lot of different ways. And so how do we go from where we are right now to rebuilding, but also to create the best experience along the way? And research really is about being, like, again, just being a yes for what is. And that can be difficult, because the challenges are real. They're physical, they're mental, they're emotional, they're relational. There are a lot of different people going through a lot of different things right now. So it's important to understand, going back to what we were talking about before, there was a Stanford study that was done on some students who were taking a break. And half of them were asked on a daily basis during their break to record just good things that happened to them throughout the day. Just record them, write them down. The other half were asked to make a list of their values, and throughout the day, connect what happened in the day to their values. And what they found, very interestingly, after the break, is that those students in the group that wrote down about their values and how the happenings of their day connected to their values, they had health. They were healthier. They had higher confidence. They were doing better successfully in so many different measures, because they were connecting meaning to the little annoyances or stresses that happen throughout the day. Again, it's a perspective, right? If you can tie it to something that's important to you, a larger meaning, then your body will react or respond in kind. So what I would say is that for someone who's going through something, a great deal of loss, it's a really great time to write down your values, to understand that this is your Everest. Whether you chose it or not, you are on your Mount Everest. To be a yes for the fact that you're on Mount Everest, that it's cold, that it's hard, it's gonna be a challenge for a little while. And how does what you're experiencing connect back to what's the most important to you? And if you've never actually sat down to consider what's important to you, it might be a good time to do that. A lot of moms talking about their kids, how stressed out they are with just having the kids just be the way the kids are. But if you really connect to the value of, like, it's really important to me, my kids are really important to me, their health and their happiness is important, then those little stresses that happen from being a mom or a dad start to live within a greater context that's outside of your little myopic world. And we're social creatures, so whenever we experience helping other people or experiencing contributing to something that's outside of just us, something larger and more important, then what we experience inside is a fulfillment that is hard to put to words.
So tell me if I'm crazy here. We've been doing stories every day. We go to subdivisions that are affluent.
Yes.
We go to subdivisions where people live off the land. The ones that living off the land are doing better.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. So they're more connected to the. Now, are you saying that the areas that are living off the land were less affluent before?
Well, they just so used to living off the land and getting along with whatever nature gives them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So if you're in practice on a daily basis, and this is the value of living simplistically, if you're in practice of being a yes and being a yes for the challenges in your day-to-day life, then when life hits you and there are new challenges, you're already in practice.
Yeah.
So if we've gotten to an experience, and most of us have, honestly, even those of us who are low income in our country are doing quite well compared to the rest of the world. So if you've gotten to a place where you've become spoiled, so to speak, it's it's actually really good for us to put ourselves in a position where we're actually struggling a little bit and having to reevaluate the value of the things and people.
You just said exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah. If they have less to lose, they're doing better than someone who has a lot to lose or lost a lot.
Right. But you know what I found too, even with affluent people, is if you hold your things, your possessions in the proper context, then you are more resistant and resilient in times of struggle. If you've written down your value system, and hardly anyone ever, when they're really tapping in and writing down their value system, hardly anyone is talking about stuff. You might have a lot of stuff, and I've heard you talk about this before. You may have a lot of stuff, but that at the end of the day is not really connected to your values. If you haven't determined that, then you can have this attachment to things that will have you suffer unnecessarily.
Only thing I'm attached to are sentimental things.
Right, because again, it's connected to what's important to you and your values, right? So again, being a yes, knowing that all of this is permanent. We're temporary.
Yeah.
All of this is temporary. We have a temporal self in our body. We have temporal experiences. And just being a yes for the flow of life and the way that it goes is so powerful. Not just through this, but just through life in general.
Man, you good. All right. So thank you. I guess we'll see you in the next few weeks, and you'll come back and do some more.
Yes. What I want to encourage before we go, I'm encouraging your viewers at home to make a list of what's important and connect everything that happens to you through your day, your stresses especially, to that list of what is valuable to you.
And scratch off, quit worrying about your garbage. It will get picked up when it gets picked up.
Perspective.
There you go. Thank you, Debbie. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. All right. We'll see you next time on Good Vibes with Debbie Cox Denova. Don't go far.